Today we're going to talk about captive breeding and the work that Carey's been leading at Untitled Chapter, and this is really it sort of brings me full circle because I got into parrots from keeping birds as a boy, and I had pet birds, and then I got involved with a parrot show and a zoo, and I was handling macaws when I was about 12 years old, and all sorts of crazy adventures at the zoo, especially in winter. Actually, when the zoo was closed, I would go and jump over the fence and feed the elephants and things like that. Totally, inappropriate behavior. And then that whole thing has been a real foundation for me, which sort of still plays a part in how we look at the captive breeding center and managing the birds there. And I think sort of that connection to individual birds is really has sort of motivated me. And I mean, as a conservationist, we look at populations and we look at the big picture, on a very ecological kind of sense. But there is still a very special thing of interacting with an individual and knowing the different characters, and that's something that Carey knows very well with our breeding birds, and some of them are lovely, adorable birds, and other ones are real butt heads, if we're honest. So it's quite an interesting challenge. And so Carey's going to tell us a bit about the year that we've had with the breeding center and at Untitled Chapter, and I shall shut up and let her get on with it. So there you go, Carey.
All right, thank you for that introduction, Sam. Okay, I'm going to attempt to share my screen. All right, everybody see that?
Yeah, it's coming through now.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so I'm going to tell you guys a bit of a story today. So my name is Carey, as Sam said. I've been working at the Captive Breeding Center since 2019. I came here as a Scarlet Macaw apprentice, or intern as we're calling them now. My time here was supposed to be short, just 6 months, but here I am 3 breeding seasons in, and I'm still very much devoted to these birds and being here. So my favorite part about living at the Captive Breeding Center is not the 10-minute walk to the beach or the short commute to work every day, but it's actually the view of this Guanacaste tree that I can see from my house right now. Because I get to see all of these beautiful birds coming here to roost every night, and it really inspires me to work really hard here and make sure that we see more of these birds in the wild. So in 2019, my responsibility as an intern was to basically take care of a number of breeding scarlet pairs. One of them being Buzz and Irene. You can see Buzz right here in the front, and Irene is a bit blurred out in the back. These birds really gave me a hard time, mostly because they really enjoyed their nest box, but not in the way that we wanted them to. They basically saw it as an enrichment item or something to destroy, and destroy they did. You can see that right here. These holes were not there at the start of the breeding season. So by the end of my 6 months, I was really handy with scrap wood and a drill. So I'm grateful for that experience. As you can also see from the photo, they did eventually decide to have a family. At the very end of the breeding season in July, E.T. and Ure hatched. Now, Buzz and Irene that year were first-time parents. So with first-time parents, we're always a little bit more cautious. We want to spend more time observing the chicks and checking on them more often. But Irene made this really difficult. She never wanted to leave the nest box. Fortunately, and much to our surprise, she didn't need our help at all. She did a great job with these chicks. E.T. and Ure were raised just like Irene was an old pro, and they are currently in our pre-release aviary getting ready to be released. So enter the next year, 2020, my first year as a bird manager here. A new job, and of course, COVID happening at the same time, bit stressful, but really overall, we had an exceptional year. We fledged 13 great greens and 4 scarlets, and in total, we only lost 4 chicks. Now, this is a really big accomplishment, something that we're very proud of. It was also the season of the adorable Chick in Bucket photo series. You can all thank Brittany for that. So of course, entering 2021, I was quite confident. We had a great year in 2020, so I expected something similar for this year. And I even selected pairs that had bred previously so that we would have another year of basically low mortality and high success, including Buzz and Irene. You can see Buzz here in his nest box this year already. Unfortunately, 2021 was not as easy as I expected it to be, and that is just the reality of captive breeding. So I want to talk real quick about mortality. It's not a fun thing to talk about, but with macaws, especially in a natural setting, we do expect this to be somewhat high. Something Sam told me this year was that basically macaws in the wild have 50 years to replace themselves in the population, and anything extra is more of a bonus. So essentially, they've evolved to fail. They have a lot of years to get this right. In a captive breeding setting, they don't have as much time to figure it out. The purpose of us being here is that we need these chicks now. And so our practice here is mostly to let them have free reign and learn how to raise chicks, but we're not just going to let chicks die either. So throughout this presentation, you're going to see some intervention being taken place. And that is just part of the job that we do. So Buzz and Irene were the ones that contributed the most to my stress this year, much like they did in 2019. So they started breeding pretty early on with one fertile egg to start. Irene kept her same behavior as 2019, not really wanting to leave the nest box. And so it was difficult to monitor this chick, but we were able to monitor their behavior from outside of the nest box. From outside the nest box, you can see the male Buzz feeding regularly at meal times, and then he would go up to the nest box and immediately feed his family. You can actually hear this happening, the chick making little squeaking noises as it's being fed by its parents. So from an outside perspective, just looking at the behavior, everything seemed normal. Unfortunately, after just a few days of life, this chick did die, which we were all very sad about. But as I said, these things do happen. And we were hopeful that Buzz and Irene would try again, maybe with having learned something along the way. And try again they did, this time with 3 fertile eggs, which we were, of course, very excited about. The first chick that I affectionately named as Clementine hatched on June 23rd. And just 2 days later, her younger sibling hatched as well. Everything seemed to be normal with these chicks. I was actually able to get into the nest box to monitor them up close. They were being fed and everything just as we expected. And chick number 3 was still developing in that egg as normal. Unfortunately, on June 26th, I opened the nest box again to find that things were not normal. Clementine had a dark spot on the back of her head and was really pale and cold. I assumed that this was an accidental injury, probably caused by her parents. And so I got there just in time to take her with me and stick her in an incubator, or a brooder, as we call them here. So here you can see she's doing all right. She's got some food in her. What I'm doing here is kind of mimicking what I've seen macaw moms do on our camera footage, which is kind of hoping to stimulate her, get her blood flowing and her organs working again. And she seemed to be doing really well, but she wasn't gaining any weight. So with macaw chicks, this is a big concern. They should really double in weight in their first 2 or 3 days, and that just wasn't happening with her. So here you can see, this is our Chickweight chart. In the blue here is what we expect from a hand-raised chick, exclusively raised by people. In the red, we can see a parent-raised chick. And then down here in the green is little Clementine. Now you can see from this graph that she never really got to where she needed to be. And the older she got, the further she deviated from that normal growth curve. So being concerned about this, I decided her parents, despite the fact that they probably caused her injury, they could feed her better than I can. And so I put her back. But I also removed her sibling. Now, the reason I did this is because her sibling had a very large crop, larger than what is to be expected. So I was concerned that they were overfeeding it and it was at a risk for getting sour crop. Now, sour crop is an infection that can very quickly cause death in a chick. So I removed it with the intention of clearing its crop overnight, getting it pooping like normal, getting things moving. That would also give Clementine the opportunity to soak up all of the love and attention from her parents and get fed a bunch so that she could gain some weight before having to compete with a sibling. Now this plan worked out great. You can see chick number 2 right here, looking really good right before going back to the nest box, doing the baby wiggle. Everything seemed great. And I was really happy about this. However, after a few days, both chicks did die. We expect that this could be trauma-based. You know, this is a lot for a little chick to go through at such a young age, and you know, it's unfortunate, but we did the best we could. So before you get too sad, remember there was a third egg that was fertilized. So what happened to that one? Well, unfortunately for Buzz and Irene, they did not get to redeem their parenting skills this year. I took that egg, seeing that things were not going according to plan in the nest, and I gave it to somebody else. So entering our story, we have Simba here, and very soon you'll see his very faithful but somewhat crazy partner, Nala. There she is in all her glory. They've been together for a very long time, and they have also been parents many times. So this is a chick that they raised in 2018, previously named Jonathan, now named Joan because we determined that she's a girl. And she is one of the top dogs in our pre-release social. She has the respect of everybody in there, and she also plays with the little chicks every time we put new ones in. And this is Lola, a chick they raised in 2020. Lola is an absolute firecracker of a bird. She's got her mom's personality, very brave, very tough, and I think she's gonna do really well in the wild. So you can see that Nala and Simba are good parents, and they produce really good, strong chicks. So I was confident in their abilities to do this again. So Nala and Simba did lay their own eggs this year. Unfortunately, they were infertile, but this made for great opportunity to not give them more than they could handle. So I removed one of their infertile eggs and I gave them Buzz and Irene's egg before it hatched. Nala did not know the difference at all. She continued incubating just like normal. And on June 29th, Alvin hatched into the world. Now, I just want you to take a look at Alvin real quick. He's very cute, but also very tiny. This is a normal size for a macaw chick, don't worry. But this chick is in the palm of my hands. Now, you can imagine being that little, that vulnerable, that so many things can go wrong. So when we get it right, and when the parents do such a good job, it's really an achievement, and we feel so grateful for that. Now, if the parents do a good job, it doesn't take long for the chick to get pretty big and start moving around the nest box right away, as you can see here under mom's watchful eye. And dad gets in on there too. Simba's a very active parent. Here you can see the whole family having a nice cuddle. Simba spends a lot of his time eating a bunch of food and feeding his family. And then when Nala starts leaving the nest box when the chick gets older, he continues to feed Nala and the chick and preen her as well. She gets lots of love and support throughout this parenting process. So despite the fact that the chick was doing excellent without any of our attention, we still do monitor the chicks every single week. So here, you can see the chick is about 3 weeks old, ready to get their identification ring. The reason we take them out of the nest and give them an exam is to make sure that nothing is going on that we can't possibly help with. You know, if they get an accidental injury, or if they're not gaining weight the way that they should be and the parents need more food, the only way we can see these things is if we take it out and weigh it and give it a nice exam. It also gives us a great opportunity to take the best pictures. So here's my favorite stage, the beginning of the paintbrush feather stage, where it's starting to look more like a bird and less like an alien. Then we can see the chick is covered in these nice little down feathers, and the colorful feathers are really starting to grow in. Here, Alvin is getting close to fledge, still has some down feathers that need to be sorted out, and the tail needs to be a bit longer. We know that the chick is ready to fledge when they're fully covered in feathers, their tail is grown a little bit, and they start looking out of the nest box. So they'll look something like this. This is Alvin now. Alvin fledged on September 19th, and that's all we could talk about on site. We were so excited. Currently, Alvin is in a little social, still getting taken care of by his parents. And very soon he'll be moved into the pre-release aviary to get to know the rest of his pre-release friends. Now, we do want to talk a little bit about what we learned this year. Obviously, we did struggle a little bit, and that's okay. It gives us an opportunity to grow. So this is a picture of a chick named Sam. And Sam is also raised by parents who had a lot of experience and have done well in the past. However, Sam's little sibling did die this year. This was unexpected. We figured that the parents probably accidentally stepped on it, which is really sad. So we're looking at this trend of some of these parents struggling this year and really wondering, what can we do in the future to make sure that they are more successful? So Fortunately, this is the only picture I have of Matt and I. Matt was the Scarlet Macaw intern this year, working in the same aviary that I did in 2019. So we have a nice little relationship over that. Matt and I pulled all of the breeding data from the start of the breeding program, including this year, and we analyzed where birds have been the most successful and where they've been the least successful. So this includes where have eggs been laid, where are eggs being destroyed if they're laid, where chicks are thriving and where chicks are struggling. And what we determined is that location really is very important. There were a few select aviaries that were in use this year that historically do not have a very high success rate. So we needed to do something about that. The aviary that Buzz and Irene was in, we think is too exposed to people, and so it's no longer in use for breeding. It can be in use for birds that aren't part of the breeding program, but for breeding, it's not in use anymore. And then there were a few select great green aviaries as well that we needed to address. And it's really important to us to maximize the use of all of our breeding aviaries for the great greens because they're so endangered. And so we made adjustments to make them more private and more habitable for the birds. What else did we learn? Fostering is a great way to improve our success rate. So I did fostering as well last year. This chick in this picture doesn't know it yet, but one of those eggs is about to be moved and given to somebody else. Though that was also a huge success. And those chicks have now been reunited and are living in the pre-release aviary together, doing very well. So fostering is something that previously we were a little bit nervous about, just because we need to get the conditions right and it can be a little bit difficult. But when done right, it's a really great technique. It kind of spreads the responsibility of rearing these chicks amongst multiple birds rather than risking having a bunch of chicks hatched in one aviary and some of them not surviving. We really want to maximize on getting all of these chicks to be able to fledge so that they can be released someday. So what else did we learn? We learned that we're still learning and we will continue to be learning for as long as we're doing this. We make improvements every single year based on things that we see during the breeding season. And our intention is to always improve so that we can see more of these birds in the wild, not just from Iguanaca State Tree here, but across Costa Rica where they belong. And let us not forget that everything we do for the scarlet macaws ultimately does benefit the great green macaws. So what we learn from the scarlets, we can then apply to the great greens. And improve their aviaries so they are more successful as well and really maximize on their chicks surviving because the great green macaw is critically endangered and they are why we're here. We really need to get more birds into the wild. So why did we choose to share this story? Of course, it does have a happy ending, but it took us a while to get there. And we chose to share this story because really it accurately reflects what we do here. We do struggle and things are not always easy breezy at the Captive Breeding Center, as this chick will tell you. But it's our struggles that really help us grow and improve, and they're just as important as our successes. So one of the things that we improved on, I wanted to show you a specific aviary. This is Punta Uva. So Punta Uva 1 is this one right here on the left. And previously it has never had any chicks. It's had a few infertile eggs, but no chicks produced. So wanting to maximize on what we learned this year and get as many breeding aviaries working as possible, we added this extra shelter here and one here as well, so that the only time they're exposed to people is through this little doorway. Only during feeding times and when we're inspecting chicks. What else did we learn? I learned this personally this year. Community is really, really important. It's what gets us through every single day, especially on the hard days. So this year, I struggled a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, losing chicks is quite difficult. But I relied heavily on my colleagues here at MRN, got a little bit of therapy, I'll be honest about that. And I was able to interact with people on the tours and seeing you guys interact with us on social media. And that really inspired me to keep going. And it inspires all of us here. I'll never forget like the feeling of seeing somebody comment a nice thing on a picture of a chick, these chicks that I spent all this time obsessing over and worrying about. It's truly a warm feeling and we're very grateful for that support. So it seems a bit cheesy to say, but I do think it's important to mention that Everybody has something to contribute to macaw conservation. You don't need to be a scientist, and you don't need to have a lot of experience. When I came here in 2019, I didn't have any experience with macaws. I only knew that I wanted to work with endangered species. So this year, my family was part on the team, and so was my therapist, and so were all of you. So we hope that you'll take a moment to celebrate the end of this breeding season with us and the start of the new one. Birds are already starting to explore their nest boxes this year, so we're expecting chicks very soon. And then another quick shout out to Tracy Aviary and the World Parrot Trust. So Tracy Aviary made it possible for me to extend the lives of those little chicks that didn't make it. They gave us all of the equipment for incubation and brooding those chicks. So to have that available in that moment was very beneficial to me. And then World Parrot Trust has been a big supporter of our breeding program since its start. So we're really grateful for that support as well. And at this time, I'll be taking questions.
Fantastic, Carey. Thank you. That's really, really great.